This story happened to me from late July 2012 till late 2014, with ongoing issues for my safety. On that note, I would like to remain anonymous for the safety of myself and my family. This all began late July of 2012. I come from a small town where everybody knows everyone. I had just turned 18, and as most 18-year-olds in my town, we would like to go drinking down at the beach and have a bonfire. I would have my regular group of friends who I would hang out with, and we would go for drives over to the bigger city and find things to do. I was on one of my drinking nights with a close friend of mine. We'll call him Adam. So Adam and I went for a drive from my parents' house in the rural area of town and decided we wanted to go out to the big city to go watch a movie. After saying goodnight to my parents and hopping into Adam's car, we went to the movie theater and had a good time. And after the movie had finished, we decided to go to McDonald's and get some food. This is where I met the man who ruined my life. He served my friend while I stood beside him at the counter, busying myself with my phone, texting friends, and whatnot, whilst Adam placed our orders. The guy who was serving us gave me a smile, and I smiled back as I said to my friend I was going to have a cigarette. He nodded, and I went outside. Moments later, he walked out with our food, and the guy who served us was walking behind him. He came and stood next to me as he asked for a lighter and introduced himself. We shall call him Chris. So Chris sparked up a conversation and gave me his number and said that he would like to take me out sometime for a movie or something. I agreed and made plans to go see him the following weekend. After about a month of spending a lot of time with Chris and him coming over to my parents' place, we agreed to make our relationship official. He would spend most weeknights at my parents' house. I lived in a granny flat on my parents' property, and dropped me off at school in the morning, to the disgust of my friends who all caught the bus. One morning, after Chris had stayed over and was driving me to school, I said to him that he should pull over next to a school bus, which was waiting for students to climb aboard. One of my friends was waiting next to the bus, so I stuck my head out the window and told her to climb in. This was mistake number one, introducing the two of them. A few weeks after my friend met Chris, we broke up, and it was a messy breakup. Shortly after the breakup, scary shit began to happen. I would hear people walking around the gravel driveway at random hours of the night. I would see Chris's car sitting down the end of my parents' road under the streetlights before I would go to bed. The stalking progressed to where I could hear him standing outside my ranch slider talking to someone, then trying to jiggle open the garage door and walk around from the gravel. Things began to really become scary for me when I would receive phone calls and texts from a random number during class about how this person was watching me as I would walk to the bus every morning and what my parents were doing throughout the day, and threats with things like how they were going to break into my house and rape me, and then hide my body somewhere deep in the forest where no one would ever find it. At this time, I was sitting my end-of-year exams and preparing for university applications, and feeding all sorts of information to my friend, who we shall call Julia. She, unknown to me, had been spending more time with Chris since the first introduction, when we gave her a lift to school. This was a fatal mistake on my behalf, because she knew exactly where I was going to be, what my timetables were, and when I would most likely be alone, and an easy target for Chris to find me. They began to date, and the texts became more frequent for both of them. Even an attempt to harm me one evening when I was staying late with people from my drama class, working on our final performance for the year, and I would be alone in an easily accessible classroom till about 10 p.m. Some of my classmates noticed his car parked across the road from where our classroom was, and said it looked like there was two figures sitting in the car waiting for me to come out. I freaked and ran my mum and informed her. She came and collected me and took me home, watching the road to make sure they hadn't followed us. The shit really hit the fan when I became so scared that I had to go to the police about the messages I received, and the fact that there was someone coming onto the property and trying to break in and harm me or my parents. Chris carried weapons in his car because he liked to hunt, and I knew it was also for security purposes because he was in the underground world of drugs. Once I had lodged a formal complaint against Chris and informed the police of his weapons he had on his person and in his home, so the police went around and had a look for anything they could find. But they found nothing, which set him off even more. That evening, he sat down the end of the road as per usual and waited for all the lights to go out. Then he came up along the front paddocks of the house and up the driveway. I was sleeping in my parents' living room, which is right beside the driveway, with big open windows and ranch sliders till my brother's room. I heard him walk along the side of the house on the driveway and towards my flat thinking I was in there, and I heard the sound of a gun being cocked. I sat up for a moment thinking what I should do. I commando crawled down the hallway to my parents' room and quietly said to my mum, Someone's outside. Mum, get out. There's someone outside. My dad bolted right up, grabbed his robe and his .22 rifle, and ran out the kitchen door, setting off the sensor light, and bolted down the driveway, chasing after something running through the information paddock. After that night, things calmed down for about a month, till I was packing up to move 10 hours away to a new city. The night after I left, my mum rang me to say that someone had been in my house, and he had walked in with muddy boots on because there was rather large footprints all through the house, and it looked as if someone was trying to scope out the place. Odd things would happen at my parents' place, like trees would get cut down in the middle of the night, or a car would drive super slow past the house with its lights off at odd hours of the night. Things started happening to me down at my new apartment. Each morning, when I would go out there would be a car waiting across the street, with its windows tinted out, just watching me, and I would receive voicemails of a violent nature from private numbers. This kept up till late last year when it all stopped. No phone calls, no sightings of random cars, no odd things going on at my parents'. Every time I go home, I never tell anyone when I'm leaving, and when I'll be back at my parents' for my own safety. I get flashbacks when I hear something like a car backfire, or I see a car similar to Chris's driving around. I always keep my home address private and my phone number restricted for my own safety, because he is always hunting for me and I don't want to put other people at risk. I always say to my mum, if I go missing, we know where to start looking. Side note, I want to thank you for reading this. I wanted to get my story out there for the safety of others, and to share something that has plagued my life and my family's for years. I needed to share this story in case something should ever happen to me, God forbid, because I know things I was not meant to know, and it has made me a target for some dangerous people. Thank you once again. Update. So this was originally written at the end of 2015 and kept private, because there had been a spark of activity. I had travelled home for the Christmas period. I was due for a major surgery in January, which meant I couldn't spend time with my friends or family afterwards, along with a death in the family. Stupidly, my sister had said to a few friends, who are not well known for keeping their mouths shut, and see Julia on a regular basis, that I was going to be home till the middle of January. I wasn't actually at my parents' home till the end of January, but my father had an encounter with Chris. The first time in 3 years we had seen him, and he had pulled alongside one of the fences and stuck his head out the window. This is normal to have people talking to my dad from their cars because we live in such a small rural area, where we're rather close to our neighbours, who are all a fair distance away. He stuck his head out the window, and asked if I was around, and that was an old friend. My dad clicked instantly to who it was, and said if he didn't leave right away now, he was going to grab his gun, and that'll be the end of it. Chris laughed and said, "We both know you won't be doing that before I put 2 bullets in your head. Now where is she?" My dad, thinking on his feet, said that I was in hospital 3 hours away, and I'm now living in the biggest city, north of my parents' house. He thanked my dad, and said to him to watch his back. My dad didn't tell me this when I came home for a recovery, because he didn't want to stress me out, but I changed my cell phone number and made sure my social media was extremely tight, with no geotags or anything that could give away where I am now. It's scary to know that someone still holds a grudge to this day, because I know some extremely sensitive information about him.